faithfully delivering value, interpreting great books from around the world. Hello, this is Sally's Book Talk. Today, the book we're interpreting for you is Siddhartha, the masterpiece by German novelist Hermann Hesse. Each of us has a teacher. A teacher is someone who imparts knowledge, teaches skills, and resolves doubts. Teachers impart knowledge, skills, and methods to students. So, besides that, can teachers impart the wisdom of life? And over 2,000 years ago, there were indeed such teachers in the world, like Confucius and Laozi in China, and Shakyamuni in India. They practiced their own ideas, taught disciples widely, lectured, and spread their doctrines. What they imparted was not specific knowledge, but the wisdom of life. So, in front of these teachers, can people gain true life wisdom through learning? The novel Siddhartha we're talking about today is based on the story of Shakyamuni. It tells the story of seeking life wisdom. The author, Hermann Hesse, won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1946. He wrote the novel Siddhartha between 1919 and 1921. It not only gained great acclaim in Germany, sparked a trend of interest in Indian thought, but was also translated into various Indian dialects that spread throughout India. According to records, Siddhartha Gautama, the founder of Buddhism, was a prince in ancient India in the 6th century BC. He traveled throughout the Ganges River basin, eventually attained enlightenment, was revered by the world as Shakyamuni, and became the Buddha, meaning the enlightened one. In the novel, Hesse splits the name Siddhartha Gautama into two, Gautama and Siddhartha. Gautama is the Buddha, and the protagonist Siddhartha is an unfulfilled person who walks a long and arduous path of practice, eventually becoming the Buddha. In Sanskrit, the protagonist's name Siddhartha means one who has found his goal. Therefore, the key point of the novel is not to spread Buddhist teachings, nor to rewrite the biography of Shakyamuni. It's a story about how people seek wisdom. The story takes place in ancient India in the 6th century BC. The protagonist, Siddhartha, is a talented young man from the elite class, belonging to the Brahmin caste. Brahmins are the highest of the four castes in India. They oversee rituals for worshiping gods and heaven, and study and teach the Vedas, the most sacred scriptures of Hinduism. Siddhartha lived in a very privileged environment. His father was erudite and taught him diligently, and his mother was gentle with a very beautiful singing voice. The people Siddhartha associated with were all learned sages. By his side was also a loyal friend named Govinda. Memories of them resting together, debating, meditating, and practicing Zen. In the Vedas, there's a sacred syllable called Om. This syllable signifies that Brahma, the supreme god in Hinduism, is to be silently recited countless times by every practitioner. It was later used by Buddhism in the 6-syllable mantra. The opening syllable Om of Om Mani Padme Hum represents perfection and unity. Siddhartha learned to silently recite it during deep breaths. By chanting Om, one experiences their own soul or personal origin, feeling the unity of soul and universe. This gave Siddhartha the highest spiritual pursuit. The book called him the young eagle. His father knew Siddhartha would become a great sage. As a prince among the Brahmins, a priest revered by all, the people around him, his followers, all felt joy and happiness. But Siddhartha was not satisfied with this. He had no joy in his heart. Why was that? This was because Siddhartha gradually doubted whether this practice could produce true wisdom. He felt that his elders had learned everything from Hindu scriptures, passed it on to him, and he would pass it on to the next generation. This knowledge, thoughts, and learning all came from outside to inside. Even if you fully comprehended it, could it bring true wisdom? Similarly, Siddhartha saw his father bathe anew every day, trying to cleanse his sins. But bathing is external. Sins are of the soul. How can the two be connected? In short, there exists a contradiction between internal and external. Siddhartha felt that if he followed in his elders' footsteps to become a priest, his life would be consumed in endless cycles of solemn rituals. He believed that to gain wisdom, one must attain enlightenment, must find the source within oneself. If one fails to achieve this, then all exploration is just taking detours, even committing mistakes. He resolved to try another path. One day, he announced to his friend Govinda that he would become a Shramana. Shramanas are ascetics who leave home in tattered clothes, covered in dust, living on alms. They are a group opposing the Brahmins, not believing in rituals, but withdrawing from worldly noise to explore the truth of life by renouncing desires. In Siddhartha's view, Shramanas abandon the self through asceticism, eliminate all worldly pleasures, and return the self to silence. In this way, the deepest and ultimate thing within the heart will awaken, and one will transcend the joys and sorrows of ordinary people, ultimately gaining life wisdom from within. This was Siddhartha's first rebellion against his own path, setting foot on another journey to seek truth. However, to join the Shramana's practice group, Siddhartha first had to persuade his father. His father, seeing him abandon a bright future to embark on asceticism, was deeply pained. He refused to respond to his son's request. Siddhartha stayed overnight in his father's room. At dawn, his father finally agreed and gave him his blessing. And so Siddhartha became a Shramana. Govinda, determined to remain loyal to his friend, joined him on the journey. They followed 3 middle-aged Shramanas onto the path of asceticism. Siddhartha gave away his robe, keeping only a loincloth and a ragged cloak. He strictly practiced the Shramana's ascetic ideals, eating only once a day and consuming raw food. He fasted continuously for over 40 days. When he saw women, his gaze was cold. When he saw wealthy people, a sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. He witnessed people in all walks of life, performing their duties, thinking these were not worth a glance, all deceit, believing that all meaning, happiness, or beauty were illusions. He believed that people cling to these illusions, satisfied with temporary pleasures, but sooner or later they must face the pain of losing it all. He felt that Shramanas possessed a serene passion. He believed this practice could help him pursue wisdom. However, after spending 3 years in Shramana practice with Govinda, he began to doubt again. He felt that abandoning the self was just an external means, not the ultimate answer, unable to solve inner problems. Then he told Govinda, actually, by renouncing the body and abandoning the self, we're only fleeing from ourselves, merely a temporary escape from the suffering we endure, a momentary anesthetic for life's absurdity and pain. He said, a low-caste person drinking a few bowls of rice wine in a tavern can achieve the same anesthetic effect. After waking up, everything is as usual. Siddhartha said, the ultimate state pursued by Shramanas is nirvana, which is the perfection and bliss of eliminating all attachments. But this Shramana teacher is already 60 years old. I doubt he'll achieve nirvana even at 70 or 80. And so shall we, because one cannot gain life's wisdom merely through external learning. So at that moment, he heard of a man named Gautama who was the Buddha. The so-called Buddha refers to an enlightened person, a true sage and wise man who has transcended worldly joys and sorrows, entered a state of serene bliss, and can contemplate the suffering of all beings. He possessed no property, no family, no wife. Clad in the yellow cloak of an ascetic, he now traveled throughout the kingdom, preaching the Dharma. Countless people followed him, becoming Buddhist disciples, monks, and even many Brahmins and nobles converted to his teachings. Thus, Siddhartha and Govinda left the Shramanas to seek Gautama. This was Siddhartha's second rebellion against himself, embarking on a new path to seek wisdom. When he announced his departure, the Shramana elder like Siddhartha's father before, was deeply angered. The elder also said this Gautama was a fraud, an impostor Buddha, but Siddhartha stood firm before the elder, gazing into the old man's eyes. The Shramana elder fell silent, his gaze vacant, body limp. Finally, he let Siddhartha go and gave him his blessing. The elder understood he could offer Siddhartha nothing more. He could only bless him. Thus, Siddhartha and Govinda followed Gautama to study the Dharma. Gautama usually preached the Four Noble Truths: the truth of suffering, the truth of the cause of suffering, the truth of the cessation of suffering, and the truth of the path to cessation. These are Buddhism's fundamental doctrines. Buddhism teaches that all existence is suffering. Thus, the truth of suffering concerns pains like birth, aging, sickness, death, and separation from loved ones. The truth of the cause of suffering is about the origin of suffering. And Buddhism attributes it to three poisons: greed, hatred, and delusion. The truth of cessation concerns eliminating these causes of suffering. Elimination leads to nirvana, the cessation of afflictions and liberation. The truth of the path concerns the practice to end suffering. This practice includes the Noble Eightfold Path, 8 methods for liberation: right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And right mindfulness and right concentration both refer to cultivating the mind with correct mental qualities. Govinda felt encouraged by this. He believed he'd finally found the path to wisdom. Yet, the more convincing Gautama became, the firmer Siddhartha's doubts grew. He still felt that whether Hindu sages, Shramana elders, or this Buddha before him, even if their teachings were flawless, they weren't the self-wisdom path he sought. Siddhartha said to Gautama, "Your greatness lies in clarifying that this world is a complete, unbroken chain, an eternal chain linked by cause and effect. This is the first time people have described the world so clearly. In your teachings, the world is harmonious and unified, without any flaws. Your teachings impart many things, such as how to live rightly and escape evil, all of which are rules. But the teachings do not contain the secret of your personal experience. As a student, merely learning the teachings must be superficial. No one can achieve salvation through them alone. Even as the Buddha, you cannot convey the reality you experienced at the moment of awakening to anyone." Here, Siddhartha raised his third doubt, consistent with his previous doubts about Hindu sages and Shamanas, that no matter how precise and polished the words used, no matter how thoroughly spoken, these teachers are imparting the results of their own seeking and realization to others through words. But the path to wisdom must be experienced personally. Following others' teachings may never awaken the inner self. He believes Gautama attained nirvana, but this was the result of his independent realization after experiencing worldly life without any teacher's guidance. In response, Gautama asked, "Do you believe all my followers should abandon me and return to worldly life?" Siddhartha replied, "No, I have no right to judge others' lives. I only know this is not the most suitable path for me." Thus, Siddhartha ultimately left Gautama, and for this, he also parted ways with Govinda, because Govinda believed the path pointed out by Gautama was correct and wanted to continue following him as a monk. After leaving Gautama, Siddhartha's quest for wisdom underwent a qualitative change. He was no longer solely fixated on spiritual practice. He began to open his eyes to the world. Previous teachers had taught him to ignore the mundane world, deny all of it, believing that external things only hinder one's spiritual evolution, and that to transcend suffering, one must deny the material world and oneself. But now Siddhartha feels that meaning lies not in the denial of things, but in the things themselves. He feels this world is mysterious and magical. He saw the world as it is: the sky, rivers, mountains, and forests, witnessing rich colors like golden yellow, azure blue, emerald green, and more. He came to a riverbank where a ferryman invited Siddhartha to stay in his thatched hut. Siddhartha fell asleep there and dreamed of Govinda. Govinda first asked, "Why did you leave me?" Then transformed into a woman. Siddhartha greedily nestled against her chest, a dream he could never have had before. Why did this change occur? This is because Siddhartha is transitioning from the spiritual world to the material world. He's bidding farewell to his past self, the ascetic about to immerse in the sensory and material desires of reality. The next day, Siddhartha asked the ferryman to take him across the river. On the river, the ferryman said he'd learned much from these waters. Upon reaching the shore, Siddhartha shamefully admitted he couldn't pay. The ferryman replied, "I never expected any payment from you. One day, you'll naturally repay me." For Siddhartha, crossing meant entering the sensual, worldly city from the spiritual realm. In its twin pillars are lust and wealth, as foreshadowed by the dream. Siddhartha. First came lust's temptation. A village woman seduced him, but he resisted through inner resolve. Later in a city, he met Kamala, a stunning courtesan dwelling in a garden with many attendants. This time, Siddhartha couldn't resist beauty's lure. He rushed to cut his hair, trim his beard, and bathe in the river, emerging renewed. He sought Kamala, who kissed him and said, "One cannot live in the city without money." Kamala gifted him a white robe and introduced the city's richest merchant to teach him business. Soon, Siddhartha gained wealth and lust. His clever mind and indifference to gains won business partners' favor. Using business profits, he bought gifts and clothes for Kamala, experiencing sexual pleasure. Yet Siddhartha carried his spiritual essence into this worldly existence. He learned business but didn't care about profit or loss, angering the merchant. When Siddhartha botched a deal, he'd say, "Don't scold me, don't add to your own troubles. Scolding only harms yourself. I learned business skills from you, but you'd better learn how to think from me." And with Kamala, Siddhartha came to realize love isn't just about physical and emotional connection. It includes patience and mutual respect. This was unknown to him before. He shared his experiences with Kamala, telling her he'd met Gautama, a saint in this world. He felt Kamala resembled Gautama and also resembled himself, because although Kamala lived materially as a courtesan, her life still had purpose and meaning. She had a serene sanctuary within where she could retreat any time to become her true self. In short, Siddhartha found teachers in the city too. Through love and wealth, he learned to live in the present moment. He lived within time now, no longer rejecting it for spiritual practice as previous teachers had taught. 20 years passed. Siddhartha's business thrived. His wealth grew, but he drifted further from his original aspirations. The material abundance and sensual pleasures he once rejected now enveloped him unnoticed. Like immersed in luxury, he grew greedier, angrier, more anxious, ensnared by worldly troubles. He began gambling, drinking, despising himself. Even the spiritual fulfillment from Kamala lost its charm. Feeling both aged, he sensed life was but a play. Finally, he recalled past spiritual joys and resolved to abandon all worldly gains. He left. When Kamala heard, she wasn't surprised. She knew his heart forever sought more. Siddhartha crossed a forest to a riverbank. Hating his pleasure-bound body, he desperately wanted to jump in for eternal release. Then, a voice from his distant past echoed. Without thinking, he chanted it. In that gust of wind, Siddhartha remembered the sacredness he'd forgotten. He finally understood that to truly know worldly pleasures, the key is to experience them firsthand. And this understanding when he was reborn, and his soul thus experienced divine grace. Siddhartha gazed at the river water. It flowed ceaselessly forward, seeming always the same river, yet every moment it was entirely new water. He felt that for the river, only the present exists. Similarly, his own life is like a long river, without past or future, only the present. The ferryman ferried him across the river once more, this time taking Siddhartha from the worldly side back to the spiritual side. Siddhartha recalled the ferryman's earlier prophecy that he would bring a gift. Siddhartha told the ferryman that he still had no money to give him and now wanted to leave his luxurious clothes behind and stay by the river as the ferryman's apprentice. In the ferryman's thatched hut, Siddhartha recounted his experiences, from how he became a Shramana, how he met Gautama, to how he wasted 20 years in the city, becoming a foolish man. He spoke all the way to his current inner despair. He said that the sound Om reappeared in his heart, and he even communicated with the river. After hearing this, the ferryman said, "The river knows everything. One can learn everything from it. The first thing you learn is to strive to sink to the lowest depths and seek the deepest foundation. Look at you, once wealthy and noble, now a ferryman." Gradually, Siddhartha noticed the rich sounds in the river. All things, all people's voices could be heard in it. Just as Siddhartha was pondering, when one hears millions of sounds in an instant, how should one describe it in words? At that moment, the ferryman whispered the mysterious Om in his ear. And so, the ferryman became yet another teacher for Siddhartha. The special thing about this ferryman teacher is that he doesn't teach anything. He just listens to Siddhartha's stories and encourages him to listen to the river. Similarly, the ferryman doesn't impose his wisdom and experiences on Siddhartha. The ferryman belongs neither to the worldly nor to the spiritual. He is a teacher between the two, just like this river belongs neither to this shore nor to the other shore. He said to Siddhartha, "Don't ask me, you just need to listen to this great river. For most people, this river is an obstacle. Most people want to use my boat to quickly cross the river to gain wealth, attend weddings, or go on pilgrimages somewhere. Only a very few will stop to listen to the river's voice. For these people, the great river isn't an obstacle, it's sacred." And one could say this is the wisest guidance. Just then, news came that Buddha Gautama was critically ill. Monks from everywhere came to pilgrimage to witness Buddha's earthly death and nirvana. Siddhartha remembered Gautama with emotion. He realized he hadn't accepted Buddha's teachings, but precisely because of this, he was the true seeker Gautama spoke of. Because if he sincerely desired enlightenment, he couldn't accept any doctrine. Among the pilgrims was Kamala, accompanied by a boy. But just before reaching the ferry, Kamala was bitten by a venomous snake. The ferryman rescued mother and child to his hut. Thus Siddhartha met Kamala, who was now on death's door. On her deathbed, she told Siddhartha this was their child. Siddhartha buried Kamala and comforted his son as best he could. He faced the boy with joy, having never imagined having a son. But the boy was ill-tempered and rebellious. Earlier, when following his mother to Buddha, he'd complained endlessly, seeing nothing worth observing. And now with his father, he couldn't understand why he lived this way. The boy thought ferrying daily was boring. He yearned for city luxuries. Siddhartha patiently explained materialism's worthlessness, but the boy disobeyed, talked back, and even stole money. Tormented, Siddhartha confided in the ferryman. The ferryman reminded him, "Have you forgotten how you left your own father? Your father too believed only his path was best, yet he let you go. What father can stop a child from living their own life? Even if the child gets stained by life's brine, bears sin's burden, or swallows self-brewed bitterness, could a father prevent that? Don't forget, you only understood freedom from sorrow, pain, and disillusion after 20 years in the world. Can you make your child grasp this immediately? Moreover, isn't he like you seeking himself?" This talk addressed father-son dynamics. But it also spoke to teacher-student relationships. As a student, Siddhartha understood wisdom can't come merely by accepting a teacher's instruction. Yet, as a father, He wished his son to replicate his path and grow according to his will. This was because before his son, Siddhartha wasn't a spiritual saint, but merely an ordinary father, possessing the most common earthly love, a blind affection. Though the ferryman advised against it, he still demanded his son listen to the river like him, eat the simplest food, gather branches daily, until finally pushing his son to explode. The son said, "I hate you! I won't be pious like you! I'd rather be a murderer than a sage like you." The next morning, the boy fled in a boat. Siddhartha and the ferryman built a raft. He chased him to the city, seeing familiar sights and recalling scenes with Kamala. He saw former merchants, familiar servants, gamblers, musicians, still a gaudy world, yet monks still practiced asceticism. Siddhartha sat, thinking of his son. Feeling something within had died. He felt emptiness, without joy or purpose. But in this despair, he suddenly awakened, realizing his son wouldn't return. He must let him go, just as he himself had done before. Everyone must explore their own path. For many days after, he pondered his son's departure. Though enlightened, he remained deeply sorrowful and pained. One day, gazing at the great river, he felt it mocked his helplessness. That evening, he poured out his grief to the ferryman, who listened patiently. He invited Siddhartha again to listen to the river's voice. This time, Siddhartha focused intensely, emptying his mind, letting all things enter his heart. Previously, he heard all sounds in the river and tried to distinguish them. Now he stopped distinguishing, accepting all, joyful and weeping, angry and longing, childlike and adult, wise and foolish, vibrant and dying. They intertwined and wove together in countless ways, flowing into his ears. All goals, all desires, all good and evil, joy and sorrow, every thought, event, and bond in life formed a unified world. Siddhartha realizes once again that life is a river flowing forward unstoppably. Some pains in life are unavoidable and unstoppable. Each generation must experience it themselves. Now he can understand both his father and his son. And that mysterious syllable, which he could hear through meditation over 20 years ago, rings in his ears once more. Thus, Siddhartha's journey of exploration forms a cycle. He left his privileged life, departed home, followed many teachers, and experienced joys and sorrows on the shores of spirit and world. He once got caught in the web of materialism and was bound by familial love, but ultimately heard the sound of perfection on the great river between spirit and world. This Om is different from the original syllable. Siddhartha is no longer the pious youth solely seeking wisdom. Having seen life fully, he now laughs from the depths of his heart. He tells the ferryman, "You are an enlightened person, like the Buddha. You possess wisdom." At that moment, the ferryman also sees the serene wisdom reflected in Siddhartha's eyes. He stands up, touches Siddhartha's shoulder, and says, "I've been waiting. This moment now I can go. It's over. Farewell, my hut. Farewell. Farewell, my river." The old ferryman goes into the woods and disappears. After some time, one day, Govinda comes to the riverbank. After Gautama's death, Govinda still upheld the Buddha's disciples' path, and due to his virtue, he is respected by young monks. Yet his heart remains restless. His quest is unfinished. He heard many say the ferryman on the river is a sage, so he came to see him, asking for guidance. The ferryman says, "A seeker only sees what he seeks." So he discovers nothing. To find, one must abandon all goals. Govinda is astonished to discover that the ferryman before him is none other than Siddhartha. It turns out Siddhartha took over from the departed old ferryman living in the thatched hut, ferrying on this river. Govinda stayed, and Siddhartha recounted all his past experiences. He said, "Over the years, I've had many teachers, and you, Govinda, I've learned from you too. But my most important teacher is the ferryman by the river. He inspired me to learn from this great river, helping me realize that wisdom cannot be taught. It must be personally understood." About Buddha Gautama, Siddhartha said that no matter how profound or accurate Gautama's teachings are, they're still just words. What a teacher imparts can only be words. A teacher's wisdom comes from their own life experiences. That's something they can't teach. Although Govinda was half believing, he could sense a divine charm radiating from Siddhartha. At that moment, Siddhartha asked him to bend down and kiss his forehead. Govinda did so and saw the smile on Siddhartha's face. He realized this smile was eternal, transcending everything, faithfully delivering value, interpreting great books from around the world. Hello, this is Sally's Book Talk. Today, the book we're interpreting for you is Siddhartha, the masterpiece by German novelist Hermann Hesse. Each of us has a teacher. A teacher imparts knowledge, teaches skills, and resolves doubts. Teachers impart knowledge, skills, and methods to students. So, besides that, can teachers impart the wisdom of life? And over 2,000 years ago, there were indeed such teachers in the world, like Confucius and Laozi in China and Shakyamuni in India. They practiced their ideas, taught disciples widely, lectured, and spread their doctrines. What they imparted wasn't specific knowledge, but the wisdom of life. So, in front of these teachers, can people gain true life wisdom through learning? The novel Siddhartha we're discussing today is based on the story of Shakyamuni. It tells the tale of seeking life wisdom. The author, Hermann Hesse, won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1946. He wrote the novel Siddhartha between 1919 and 1921. It not only earned great acclaim in Germany, sparked a wave of interest in Indian thought, but was also translated into various Indian dialects. It spread throughout India. According to records, Siddhartha Gautama, the founder of Buddhism, was a prince in ancient India in the 6th century BC. He traveled across the Ganges River basin, eventually attained enlightenment, was revered as Shakyamuni, and became the Buddha, meaning the enlightened one. In the novel, Hesse splits the name Siddhartha Gautama into two, Gautama and Siddhartha. Gautama is the Buddha, and the protagonist, Siddhartha, is an unfulfilled man who walks a long, arduous path of practice, eventually becoming the Buddha. In Sanskrit, the protagonist's name, Siddhartha, means one who has found his goal. Therefore, the essence of the novel isn't to spread Buddhist teachings, nor to rewrite Shakyamuni's biography. It's a story about how humans seek wisdom. The story takes place in ancient India in the 6th century BC. The protagonist, Siddhartha, is a talented young elite from the Brahmin past. Brahmins are the highest of India's four castes. They oversee rituals for worshiping gods in heaven and study and teach the Vedas, Hinduism's most sacred scriptures. Siddhartha lived in a privilege. His erudite father taught him diligently. His gentle mother had a beautiful singing voice. Siddhartha associated only with learned sages. He had a loyal friend named Govinda. Their memories included resting, debating, meditating, and Zen practice. In the Vedas, there's a sacred syllable, Om. This syllable represents Brahma, Hinduism's supreme god, chanted endlessly by practitioners, later adopted by Buddhism in the six-syllable mantra. The opening Om in Om Mani Padme Hum signifies perfection and unity. Siddhartha learned to silently chant it during deep breaths. Chanting Om helped experience one's soul, feeling unity with the universe, fueling Siddhartha's highest spiritual pursuit. The book called him the young eagle. His father knew he'd become a great sage. As a prince among revered Brahmin priests, those around him, his followers, felt joy. But Siddhartha felt no joy. Why? Because he gradually doubted whether this practice could yield true wisdom. He felt elders learned everything from Hindi scriptures, passed it to him, and he'd pass it onward. This knowledge came from outside. Even fully grasped, could it bring true wisdom? Similarly, he saw his father bathe daily to cleanse sins. But bathing is external, sins are soul deep. How could they connect? In short, an internal-external contradiction existed. Becoming a priest, like his elders, would trap him in endless rituals,